Hello and welcome to all of you. I'm really happy to see so many people. My name is Janis Harrington, and I have a book recently published by Muse, How to Cut a Woman in Half. And I'm so pleased to be hosting today's reading. We have three accomplished poets, Carrie Shipers, Jeredith Merrin, and Michael Palma, who will be reading on behalf of Kate Light. And after they've read, we'll have a Q&A so that they can respond to your questions and comments. And I'm going to mute everyone. And so the poets can unmute themselves when it's their turn. But first, Alex would like to say a few words to everyone. So let me begin by introducing him. Alexander Pepple is the founder and editor of Muse and Muse Press. He also founded and directs the Erratosphere online workshop. His poetry and prose have been or will be published in Barrow Street, River Styx, American Arts Quarterly, Light, Think Journal, Euphony, Per Contra, Eclectica, Measure, and in other journals. Alex edited the Muse anthology, Muse Press 2010. Alex?
But thank you everyone for showing up this afternoon for what I hope will be a very delightful and enlightening afternoon of poetry reading. And we have three accomplished poets here reading. First, we're reading in memory of Kate Light, and we have Michael Palma, who has graciously offered to stand in and read on her behalf. And I'm also very pleased that we have members of the Light family in attendance this afternoon. And along with Kate, we'll also have Jeredith Merrin, who was a finalist in the Able Muse Book Award as chosen by XJ Kennedy. And also Carrie Shipers, who will be reading from her book, Cause for Concern. And she was a winner also of the Able Muse Book Award. And I'll have to remind everyone that we are still open for submissions to the Able Muse Book Award, which will be concluding at the end of this month. So just a few days left to go on that. And also submissions are open for the regular issues of Able Muse, which will run through, and submissions will run through July 15. So if you want to appear in the next Able Muse, this is your chance to submit. And I'll have all these links presented in the chat for those who want to look at them and take action. And with that, without further ado, I'll leave proceedings over to Janis, who will be running the show this afternoon. Take it over, Janis.
Thank you, Alex. I'm delighted to introduce our first reader. Carrie Shipers is joining us from Providence, Rhode Island. She is the author of 4 poetry collections. Cause for Concern won the 2014 Able Muse Book Award. Ordinary Morning was published by ABZ Press in 2010. The University of New Mexico published her 2 most recent books, Family Resemblances in 2016 and Griefland in 2020. Molly Peacock, judge of the 2014 Able Muse Book Award, said this about Cause for Concern. The poet's craft is palpable in every arresting line. In a review of Griefland, Jahan Dubrow said, full of rage and empathy and precise renditions of loss. Griefland should be required reading for anyone who must eventually confront this kind of pain. Carrie, I'm sure everybody is looking forward to hearing you read. So if you'll unmute yourself, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Janis, and thank you all for being here. I've not read for a while. I'm a little bit nervous, and so I have to warn you, I don't think the dog will bark, but there might be sirens. Okay, so I'm innocent. It's just a noisy neighborhood. All right. I'm going to start with a few poems from Cause for Concern. And the first one has a title that reads straight into the first line of the poem. Dear hospital, I hate your smell of potatoes and alcohol wipes, the forced cheer of your lobby with its dried flowers and holiday displays, your elderly volunteers, their kindly greetings and inability to answer any question except where the restrooms are. I hate your coffee shop, its weak brew and insufficient hours, live piano music that sets my teeth on edge. I hate your winding hallways, signs pointing places I don't want to go, your waiting rooms, awkwardly arranged and stocked with pamphlets, what to expect in the ICU when caregivers give too much, I shove in my purse when no one's looking. I even hate your chapel, which is too close to the elevators, although at least it's dimly lit. The plastic shoes your nurses wear, your parking garage, the no smoking policy that covers your entire campus. I hate that you call it a campus. Dear hospital, I hate how many of your windows I've looked through, how many hours I've spent observing your routines. I hate how safe you make me feel, how every time we leave, I worry it's too soon. The next poem I'm going to read has an epigraph. It's after Regan Lothius, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing, but who I stole the form of the poem from. So I want to give credit where it's due. He watches the Weather Channel because nothing else is on so early in the morning when he drinks coffee in an empty house. Because almanacs are of limited use compared to satellites. Because spring will have to come somehow and cold reminds him which bones he's broken. Because every flight delayed or canceled is one he won't be on. Because people should stay where they're from, except for his children who were right to leave. Because a flood will take what it can and move uphill. Because just once he'd like to see a tornado touch down in an empty field and go away hungry. Because his wife nearly died on an icy road, because he can't prepare for disasters he doesn't understand, because wind keeps him awake, because his boots are by the door, but his slicker is in his truck, because he can't change a damn thing forecast, and uncertainty aches like a tired muscle, an unhealed wound. The next poem I'm going to write, this book has a lot of letter poems, and I really thought I'd written all of the letter poems a person could possibly write, but just wait till I read from my most recent book. Turns out I wasn't out yet. This poem, and I have to say, this is one of those poems that people have really responded to. It was in the Writer's Almanac. Every once in a while, I'll still get an email from somebody who just discovered it. And I don't know why exactly it's this poem, but it's always so gratifying when not only do you have readers, but they actually contact you and say, I read this. So I'm very fond of this poem. In your next letter, please describe the weather in great detail. If possible, enclose a fist of snow or mud, everything you know about the soil, how tomato leaves rub green against your skin and make you itch, how slow the corn is growing on the hill. Thank you for the photographs of where the chicken coop once stood, clouds that did not become tornadoes. When I try to explain where I'm from, people imagine cornbread, cast iron, cows drifting across grass. I interrupt with barbed wire, wind, harvest air that reeks of wheat and diesel. I hope your sleep comes easy now that you've surrendered the upstairs. Hope the sun still lets you drink one bitter cup before you rise. I don't miss flannel shirts, radios with only AM stations, but there's a certain kind of star I can't see from where I'm from. Bright, clear, unconcerned. I need your recipes for gravy, pie crust, canned green beans. I'm sending you the buttons I can't sew back on. Please put them in the jar beside your bed. In your next letter, please send seeds and feathers, a piece of bone or china you plowed up last spring. Please promise I'm missing the right things. Now, the last poem I'm gonna read from this book. It's Easter. I never get to read this poem, but it's nearly Easter, right? So this seems like the perfect time. This is Love Poem to Ted Neely in Jesus Christ Superstar. That man's too old to play Christ, someone said when you appeared on stage. 30 years in those white robes, spotlights tracking your graceful sleeves, the attentive angle of your head as you worked a crowd. I agreed that you looked tired, but when Mary Magdalene anointed you, when you cast merchants and money changers from the temple, I forgot your thinning hair and wrinkled brow, forgot how your story ended, your broken voice crying on the cross, your body arched as you ascended. I lost track of how many songs were in the second act, thought there might be more. The empty tomb, your appearance on the road to Peter in Jerusalem, but the cast came out for applause. soldiers, apostles, and women, Annas, Caiaphas, Pilate, Mary in her red dress, Peter, that sturdy fisherman, Judas, who has all the best songs, and finally you, head bowed at our ovation. I didn't come to worship, but you've left me no choice. I don't care how old you are, how many times you've done this act before. You still rock those power ballads, still heal with the same sweet force before you rise. Tonight, I'll believe until the curtain closes, tour bus rolls away. I'm going to read a few poems now from my most recent collection, Griefland, which came out in the summer of 2020. It was, which was not like the best timing, right? It had been accepted sometime before that. And then it came out in the middle of that terrible, terrible summer. I like to tell people it makes a terrible gift, which maybe it would have anyway, but the timing was not great. But I'm very proud of the poems, which is something. So the first poem I'm going to read is the title poem for the book, Griefland. On the road to Griefland, you pass other attractions you'd prefer. Zoo, water park, dirt track for monster trucks, haunted asylum on a hill, but it's too late to change your plans. Admission costs more than you'd thought. Your coupon is expired and no discounts apply. Inside the gates, the landscape you remember has been changed. Where you expect a carousel, a band shell stocked with elderly trombones. In place of a photo booth, a funhouse full of foggy mirrors. At least the rides are still the same. Roller coaster, Ferris wheel, cages that rotate upside down. You start with the one that you like least, barrel that spins, pins you to the wall while the bottom drops away. Despite rust and peeling paint, accidents are rare and so far never fatal. You're safe if you stay seated, keep hands and feet inside the car, obey the teenage operators who make sure your lap bar's locked, wish you an awesome ride. At Griefland, you crave cotton candy, funnel cake, corn dogs striped with mustard you drip on your shirt. Your stomach hurts even before the kettle corn, nachos, cherry snow cone leaking in the dirt. No matter what the forecast says, damp air forms a sticky film. Umbrellas aren't allowed, so during daily showers, people shelter in the gift shop and arcade. Being near so many bodies crowds your breath, but far off lightning means you're trapped until clouds clear. You don't doubt you deserve a prize from game booths rigged to let you win, or that once your arms are tired, the giant blow-up hammer, stuffed dog with mournful eyes, won't seem worth keeping. The longer your day at Griefland lasts, the more unease you feel among the smeary clowns, groundskeepers trailing smoke as they sweep up debris. Your feet and knees are sore, but even when you find a place to sit, you can't keep still. You need one more thing to make your trip complete, and only walking will remind you what it is. Rising darkness amplifies music from the rides, songs you heard once at a high school dance or college party, this morning in the car. You watch packs of people rushing toward their fun, their smiles forced and laughter frantic, and decide you're not like them at all. When you're ready to leave, it's hard to find your way. Twice, you try to follow exit signs and wind up deeper in the park. You consider climbing the fence fronting the road, then see its row of barbs. Frustration makes your headache worse, as does the whine and blare of the PA, parties anxious to meet at the grandstand or fountain. After a long search for your car, which is much farther from the gates than you remember, you drive home bleary-eyed and hunched over the wheel. Your visit wasn't quite what you'd been hoping, but you know it's pointless to complain, swear you won't go back. Griefland may not be your favorite place, but no one stays away for good. So I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't finished writing letter poems when I thought I was. And Griefland has a lot of letters to other authors and poets and memoirists. I read so much when I was trying to make sense of my own grief, right? Because I don't know, I didn't want answers because I didn't expect to find them, but I very much wanted company. So this next poem is a letter to someone whose company I really valued during this time, and still. Dear Mark Doty, I don't expect you to remember this, but 10 years ago in Omaha, my husband and I met you at a writing conference dinner. He didn't realize who you were until the car ride home. He'd just seen 2 empty seats, been glad you laughed with him and weren't stuck up. I only had a week to think about his death before it was a fact. Watching his unsteady breath supported by a respirator, I sometimes felt that I was dying too, or else already had. I moved and ate and took up space, but was so full of grief myself had gone away. Like yours, my body hurt in ways I recognized as metaphors. For months, the muscles in my chest pressed hard against my lungs, left me dizzy and stunned. Because my neck and shoulders didn't ache if I looked down, when I walked the dog, I picked up pennies, pencils I could use despite bite marks, erasers ground to the ferrule. Like you, I'm not sure what it means to let my husband go, if that's something I want or think is possible. I've cleaned out his closet and his desk, taken his ashes to the place where they belong, all things I'm told mean moving on. And yet each day is marked by absence most of all. He always loved the world more than I did. He knew the neighbors' names and made friends on the bus, made lists of things he meant to learn and see. Sometimes I try to be generous like him. Then I wonder if waving cars into traffic counts, making eye contact with strangers when I'd rather not. Mark, if we're ever introduced again, I won't retell the night this letter started with. If you said you remembered us, remembered him, I'd assume you were lying to be kind. Well, if you confessed you didn't, I couldn't help being upset. I'm not bitter all the time, but like you, I wish more people would admit how often comfort fails or doesn't last, how without him to share it with, even beauty brings me pain. Mark, I hope my husband died in the same radiance you sensed when Wally did. I just find it hard to hold on to that light. And the last poem I'm going to read, is another letter poem. This one to someone I know a lot better than Mark Doty, who I literally sat across from for 20 minutes once. This is a letter to my dad. Letter started on my steering wheel. The mechanics I trust most wear flannel shirts that smell of coffee and exhaust. They notice my low mileage, how clean my engine is, say they can tell I've taken care. When they offer me options for repair, I try to channel your advice, then spend what it takes to ward off worry. A week after you died, I went to get my car inspected, was told I wouldn't pass until I drove 200 miles. The atlas in my trunk's a decade out of date, its pages much too big for this new state, and yet I can't imagine throwing it away. When I confessed that I was moving east, you asked if I'd start talking like the people on the yard, and I said I'd do my best not to. I sound the most Missouri when I'm tired or in pain, and also if a y'all are fixin' to will get me what I want. A lot of what you taught me, I lost by not using it. The names of trees and tools and how to win at 5-card stud, the best phase of the moon to plant potatoes in. Yet sometimes I'm surprised by my certainty. From the sidewalk, I could tell my neighbor's generator needed new spark plugs, but didn't have the words for how I knew. On the wall beside my desk, a shadow in the paint suggests 3/4 of a skull. It reminds me of your gear shift knob and hitch protector, the plastic skeletons you hung in the back window of your truck. The morning of the day you died. Between Mom's calls, I searched tickets to Kansas City, sat staring at that skull. By the time she said, "Come now," I felt like I'd been traveling for hours. I won't call you my compass. It's not your fault how often I get lost. Hear my almanac and AM station, concrete foundation like the ones you built so many of. You always said you didn't fly because it was unnatural, but I know you didn't like to ride with anyone you hadn't taught to steer. Thank you.
Beautiful. And if you want to unmute and clap, that's great.
Bravo.
That was terrific.
Thank you very much, Carrie. They were
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you so much. Thank
That
you.
was terrific. That was
Okay, great. I'm going to mute everybody again, and I'm very pleased to introduce our next poet, Jeredith Merrin, who's joining from Tempe, Arizona. Her first two poetry books, Shift and Bat Ode, appeared in the University of Chicago Press Phoenix Poets series. Shift was a finalist for the Lambda Poetry Book Award. Jeredith's third collection, Cup, won second place in the 2013 Able Muse Book Award. The final judge, X.J. Kennedy, said, "In Cup, we meet a poet of rare power and unique originality, unafraid of feeling, able to take on matters of the deepest consequence." Jeredith's prize-winning chapbook, Owling, was published by Grayson Books in 2016. She's also the author of a book of criticism on Marianne Moore and Elizabeth Bishop. Her reviews and essays have appeared in the Southern Review and elsewhere. So I'm looking forward to hearing you, Jeredith, and I'll turn over the mic if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Janis?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Alex and Janis and Carrie. I enjoyed that so much. You did not seem nervous, and I really enjoyed your vivid, strongly felt, moving poems. They also carried me back to the Midwest, where I taught for many years. So I'm also going to read letter poems, interestingly, many of them, and some of them to dead poets and artists who, of course, are with us by virtue of their poetry and art. I kind of like to start with someone else, and because I am hoping to honor other poets, I thought I would mention the latest book by Adam Zagajewski, a Polish-American poet who died almost exactly a year ago. And his, golly, it's disconcerting to see yourself. Anyway, almost a year ago, and I admire his work a lot. This is a short poem by Adam Zagajewski, whose book called True Life just appeared in English translation posthumously. This is a little poem I thought would mean something to other writers in particular, and oddly, it also has something to do with dread tax season. It's a poem called Wind. Wind. We always forget what poetry is, or maybe it happens only to me. Poetry is a wind blowing from the gods, says Choran, citing from the Aztecs. But there are so many quiet, windless days. The gods are napping then, or they're preparing tax forms for even loftier gods. Oh, may that wind return. The wind blowing from the gods, let it come back. Let that wind awaken. Should have told you before I read that Choran is simply the name of a Romanian existentialist philosopher, but Poetry is a wind blowing from the gods, says Choran, citing the Aztecs. Oh, may that wind return. So my third book, Cup, thank you, Alex and everyone, was appeared from Able Muse. And a section of that book is made up of poems to or for my splendid daughter, Lisa, at a time when she was in cancer treatment. She is cured and absolutely flourishing right now. But during that time, I had to be halfway across the country teaching. And I sort of breathlessly, out of breath the way one is in times like that, wrote little 10-line poems to her. And I just thought of this one because it is in Cup. And oddly, it's also relevant to our season with the feds. And forgive my rudeness, but in the poem, but this was written out of a mother's grief and anger. Today, I went to get the tax forms we needed from the federal building, and the thick, bald, simultaneously smug and envious low-level bureaucrat in his stupid no-color cube told me they didn't have them. He called them as if I'd asked for some boutique Costa Rican chocolate specialty forms. Fuck him. Fuck this small town city. And as for the knee-jerk advice, positivity, fuck you. But not you. Okay, I will turn to a much more calm and loving poem now. I'm not going to read too many poems because it was interesting thinking about this, that if I'm writing letters or poems to dead artists I love and am in some kind of commerce with, I have to explain a little bit about them. So I won't take too long. This one is to John Clare. John Clare, probably maybe best known for his poem about the badger that most of us read in school, the badger being hunted down, is an English romantic poet. I love him partly because he says, I love so often, as he writes about the endangered natural world. Much of that world was for Clare during his time disappearing, or suddenly made out of reach by no trespassing signs because of the laws of enclosure that were passed in England at the time. His poetry, I think, it tries to keep things that were lost or in danger of being lost. The great variety of wildlife, particularly birds, which he loved. Mary, the woman he loved and lost. And even the homely language of the country, of country peasants that he grew up with. So there are a few words you won't know in the poem because they're archaic, but I suppose that's part of the point. So this is to John Clare. Okay. So John, the summer's come again. The great variety of birds is gone. Meadowland is scarce to dream upon, and our many poets seldom rhyme. Keats, who shared your publisher, has fame for his late odes. You're best known for I am, yet what I am, none cares or knows, written when you were old. In the asylum, you went mad. Written when you were old in the asylum. Freshmen in college recite your anguish with conviction. In the anthology, you speak for them. A deep pink English rose now bears your name. None of us knows, do we, what will become. You became like your badger by the end. thick-set and burrowing and shy of men, wounded and mad, you thought you were Lord Byron. You were your losses keeper, enclosured freedom. You were loafing's laborer, the sum of subtractions, Mary, the fields, hope of acclaim. You gave in to ale, but stuck to rustic diction, your totter grass and bulks between the grain, your hewing larks and droking flowers at noon and skirting hares. Editors preserve them now. Let stand what's been cut down. The elm trees, their soft southering. You, John, homeless at home. I was going to read a poem for Edward Lear, and I still am, but I changed my mind. I was going to read a poem for Edward Lear from Cup, but I found one in my earlier book, Bad Ode, which I think is more, maybe easier to hear. Edward Lear, as you know, wrote limericks, and he wrote children's poems, which we love. The Owl and the Pussycat Went to Sea in a Beautiful Pea Green Boat. That's Edward Lear. And he also painted. He painted landscapes, and he painted wildlife, and particularly birds. Lear painted not stuffed birds like Audubon did, but birds from life, and they're quite wonderful. And the cover of my owling, if you can see that, has a lithograph by Edward Lear of a wonderful Eurasian eagle owl, magnificent creature. I understand that there's a Eurasian eagle owl that escaped from the Central Park Zoo and is in New York now, thriving too, evidently. So I'm going to read that earlier poem for Edward Lear. He was also, what else should I say about him quickly? A repressed gay man, sad much of his life. He had a long nose, which he made fun of himself in limericks and in his poetry. And so here's a poem to Edward Lear that's called Dear Edward Lear, I Love Your Birds. The red and yellow macaw resplendent, and clearly your puff-chested model, arching head over the arc of half-extended red, yellow, blue wing, intended us to look. My first bird, was in kindergarten in Oregon, a robin in profile and colored correctly, but with four-toed feet. Teacher pinned it on the wall, and I was humiliated by open house laughter. A child who felt can still often feel wrong. Hundreds of ornithological lithographs beautifully right, but you felt wrong. Also, I love your salmon-crested cockatoo, so Parisian chic, and your backward S-necked, elegant, but clearly low IQ, flamingo on one foot. Your toko toucans and gold-eyed, white V-eyebrowed or seagull-eyebrowed spectacled owl, all earning scientific, artistic respect, polite patronage, upper crust meals, but little money, all made before the age of 25. Birds, of course, are phallic, though without apparent sexual organs, and beaks also, like the large noses in your nonsense books. Great travelers birds are, as you were, darting everywhere and making sketches for imitative formal landscape paintings for which you're not remembered. Following your odd-shaped nose to Rome, Corsica, Corfu, Malta, Egypt. In Albania, you were pelted, but in Petra, your pockets were rifled. In India, more seizures. in Salonika counting kestrels. Is it coincidental your name rhymes with fear, fleer, tear, queer? I don't think so. Bless you, because you never, a biographer tells us, showed any capacity for flattery. Sad single man who gladdened children, the young Charles Pirouet, for instance, dashing off for his amusement the light green bird, the pink bird, the yellow bird, and 13 others in your hotel in northern Italy in 1880, though nearly blind at 68. Are you comfortably nested now in what you refer to as the next existence? I don't think so. But thank God, when you were dying in San Remo, rheumatic and feeble, one servant for company, on good days, you could be moved to the little villa's terrace. It was dim spring with 10 new pigeons trying to fly from the railing, a great diversion. So the last poem, Janis, not if I have time for one more or not. Is it
Yeah.
okay?
That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, just one more. And this is also a letter poem, and it's to Tom Gunn. And it's quite new. And this poem is forthcoming from the Three Penny Review out of the Bay Area, which is appropriate because Tom taught much of his life in the Bay Area. I knew him slightly. I certainly wish I had known him better in the years that I was earning my graduate degree at Berkeley. So Tom is an English American poet who taught for many years at UC Berkeley. He's probably best known for a marvelous book called The Man with Night Sweats, a heartbreaking book, to and about friends who died of AIDS in the epidemic. Tom was gay. There's a long poem in that I admire very much. I admire a lot of his work. A long poem called Lament that is in couplets, which is actually a wonderful lesson in how you can write an incredibly formal poem that is incredibly full of feeling. Sometimes students think that's not possible, but it certainly is. Lament is a great poem. Cats show up in this poem because cats are very big. A cat adopted me this year. And what else do I need to say that might help? You probably need to know that On the Move is a very famous early poem by Tom, which is about motorcycle boys. So On the Move shows up in this poem. And that two other poets are named in this poem, the Renaissance poets he admired, and so do I, George Herbert and John Donne. The poem is called Here to Tom Gunn. Here to Tom Gunn. Like the small cat's outside shadow on the white apartment wall my iPhone camera couldn't catch, you will not be caught in lines other than your own. But you have been in the room with me, the way, as you wrote in one of your many warm and nimble letters, the poets you liked best, most of them dead like Herbert, were in the room with you. And pretty boys in the room also, their photos plastered on your study wall. Hey, Keanu, I'm here. Once in your claustrophobic Berkeley office, both of us earnest, blushing, you penciled question marks and tiny checks on the margins of my short, sad poems. Once I made you laugh, an anagram on our lionized friend's name, Try Pink Robes. I'm going to let you figure that out. Try Pink Robes. You had a full-on laugh and loved the sun and loved sex, So inordinately, I suddenly wanted to rhyme squander with pleasure. But that's not right. You'd never think pleasure a waste, although you may have been, as we used to say, wasted. Like the lovers you kept as friends and their new lovers, cats were welcome in your Cole Street home. Fierce defenders of individual freedom, most secure within structures of repetition, don't you suppose that all house cats would vote, however bohemian the home, old-fashioned Republican, like Marianne Moore? You changed your mind about Moore, but now you cannot change or answer. Mind averts its eyes at death, heart stops its ears. But you believed in looking squarely at and staying open, as in that Caravaggio of Paul you wrote about to Tony White, as in the aching couplets of your lament. And you were a paradox, as suited one who wanted to be a 20th century Donne, resolutely faithful and unfaithful, unassuming yet theatrical, in conduct as in verse, both formal and free, on the move and still.
Thank you, Jeredith.
Thank you.
And if people want to unmute themselves and clap, please do.
That was wonderful.
It was
That was
beautiful,
wonderful.
Jaredith.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Karen.
So
And I'm very pleased to introduce our final poet for today, Michael Palma. And as we mentioned earlier, he's going to read on behalf of Kate Light. Michael is the author of 4 poetry collections, The Egg Shape, Antibodies, A Fortune in Gold, and Begin in Gladness. His book, Local Colors, is forthcoming from Muse Press. He has also published Faithful in My Fashion, Essays on the Translation of Poetry, and 20 translations of modern poets. His translation of Dante's Inferno was first published by Norton in 2002 and reissued in the Norton Library series in 2021. His fully rhymed translation of the complete Divine Comedy will be published by Live Right next year. That sounds like an accomplishment. Michael is going to read from Kate Light's book, Character Shoes, which was published by Muse in 2019. And I'm delighted that we have members of Kate's family here and also her friends. So let me briefly introduce Kate. She was born in Illinois in 1960 and raised in West Lafayette, Indiana. For many years, she was a professional violinist and a member of the orchestra of the New York City Opera. She taught poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction at Hunter College. She won the Donald Justice Award, the Nicholas Roerich Prize, and an award from the Academy of American Poets. She was the author of 4 volumes of poetry, The Laws of Falling Bodies, Open Slowly, Gravity's Dream, and Character Shoes. Kate was also the librettist for 2 operas and 2 concert pieces. She died in New York City in 2016 at the age of 56. A great loss. In the introduction to Character Shoes, Suzanne Nagur writes, "The ultimate lesson is the endlessness of heartbreak, a truth of her life here told with such timeless beauty that it seems like a love letter to the whole history of English language poetry. Please welcome Michael Palma.
Thank you very much. And I'd certainly like to begin by thanking Alex for accepting my forthcoming book and giving me the opportunity to join the roster of marvelous poets that he has published through Able Muse Press, including the two who have just read, whose finely crafted, carefully observed, deeply moving poetry is the perfect complement to Kate's work. Now, I'll be reading exclusively from Kate's last book, Character Shoes, which, as mentioned, was published by Alex and Able Muse Press in 2019. And in a sense, to introduce Kate's spirit to this reading that, of course, we all deeply wish she were here to present herself. I'm going to begin with a poem entitled Train en route to a reading. And for those, if any of you are unfamiliar with Kate's work, you will notice immediately the craft that went into every line that she wrote, her caressing of the English language, this rich and immensely flexible instrument that it's our privilege to work with. Train en route to a reading. I'm grateful for the long train ride. I wouldn't want to hurry it or get a quicker train by paying more. I only seek to be inside. And if I could be spared almost of sound or smell, all that nearly neutralized, in solitude, alertful solitude, which I so prized I chose to travel gradually, and all by ground. If asked to talk about my life, what will I say? That I'm chasing it, or chased by it, blown from day to night to day, not quite my own, adapting means and ends to make my way? You take a step, then soon that step takes you, and gradually for guidance, how or what to do, others look your way. And you can't be looking good, although you truly try and wish you could. Stop the world. I now know what that meant. You cannot stop the world or even train, but you hold peace a moment in your palm again if you can write about the train and how it went. The first section of Character Shoes, in that first section, Kate, like many poets at a certain period in their lives, looks back to her earliest life, to the experiences that went into the making of the woman, and especially the artist that she became. The section is entitled One Child, and I'll read two of the poems from that section. The first poem in the book is called Mirroring. I was a wide-eyed child. My mother took us down the aisles to our seats night after night. I was too young. 5 was the legal age for passing through the doors, and I was small for 4. So she put sponges in my boots to make me normal. There I sat, legs dangling far from the floor, in boots too big and barbelled with sponges. A bit groggy from dinner, outfitted like a doll, not knowing the name of what we would be watching, but already gluttonous at 4. I wanted to open my chest and let the treasures in, let the festivities begin. as dancers whirled, singers sang, or play unfurled, and dinner curdled inside me, I grew by turns sleepy and alert, nodding and bobbing back to attention, certain I wanted to be up that side of the lights, making other eyes widen. And the other I'll read from that section is, in fact, its concluding poem, entitled Friends. When my sisters hung a laundry line each night between their two beds and tiptoed across it, and across it tiptoed the people who whispered inside my sisters' heads, giggled and shh, and schemed and dreamed up stories. If they'd listened closely, there was another voice they could have caught. Whisper with me, whisper with me. But they did not. I do not cotton to these myths of three, for two of three can reconfigure and disagree. Bonds form and last till they suddenly undo, and one two is changed to another two. And I got over Whisper with me, although all their grown-up looking friends I admired so, the handsome boys especially I recall, smart and talented, athletic, tall, ignoring me or swinging me up to ride a shoulder. I never thought I'd be so lucky as to actually get older. But came a time when my friends were as beautiful as theirs, and spoke to me as equals, gave me equal shares, attention and crushes, attention and love, whispered with me and didn't stand above me. While one man, substantial, sweet and tall, appeared to me most beautiful of them all. Now I thank my sisters, who gave me what otherwise I might have lived a life without. The mantra of my life singing quietly inside the page. Whisper with me, whisper with me. Now, the book Character Shoes has an introduction by the poet Suzanne Noguer, who was an especially close friend of Kate's, who cared for her during her last illness, and who has vigorously promoted Kate's work. And in the introduction, she says, the one word not to be found in this book is cancer. The closest light comes to talking about the illness that took her life in 2016 at age 56 is the poem A Bad 10 Years, in which she compares the period of her illness to its equivalent in the life of her 300-year-old violin. Light fully expected to recover, never reckoning that this collection of poems, which she selected and arranged herself, would be her last. So, a bad 10 years. 10 years, 1/30th of your life, if we do not count the years spent as a tree. 10 years on Earth equals 1.333 years for me. Or, if I live to be 85, 1/30th nears 3 years. And this hellish time becomes a long and sudden illness, then remission in a snap. You rub your belly and blink and think, where have I been? A nap? Feeling refreshed and strong. Oh, Rip Van Winkle violin, I've missed you so. But I am older now. Do you still know me? Or do you know me not? You are my love, rediscovered. I touch each loved, remembered spot. But I am only one of a string, a series of mistresses and masters for whom you sing. Writing blurbs for Kate's second collection, Open Slowly, Dana Gioia wrote, Kate Light is at the center of one of the most compelling developments in contemporary American literature, the reinvention of the love poem. Sinuously musical and deeply expressive, her poems speak as love does to both the body and the mind, the soul and the senses. And as Suzanne Laguerre observes in the introduction to Character Shoes, the great theme throughout Light's work, and the one that inspired her greatest poems, is romantic love, its pleasures, its perils, and its piercing pain when lost. So here are several poems on this great theme of Kate's work. One entitled, I Studied Love. I studied love at the hardest schools, took classes with the highest masters, checked myself in at the vestibules and entered, coatless, bootless, after. And there is no awarding of this degree, no ceremony of graduation, for I am the practice, and the practice me, under life and art's auspices of mutual imitation. When I asked the teachers, what do you suggest? They never had an answer. Until one day a gifted laureate, who was, it seemed, a scholarly romancer, said, heartbreak is an endless occupation. Oh, I said, and hit the books, and faster, harder, longer. Oh, I said, and shook my head, and dreamed of growing stronger. Now, Suzanne Laguerre speaks of Kate's celebration of the pleasures and especially the pains of love. So here is one poem about the pleasures and two about its pains. When we met. When we met, you told me little sounds at night disturb you. Ticking clocks, that strange breathing fans make, buzzing of a light switch. I said, I understand. I am the same. And already had the thought that we would someday share in kind. Though I am not usually quick to run such places in my mind. Now that I lie next to you, sounds of clocks are nothing to the singing of my heart, which keeps me up night after night, kissing every part of you that I can find. The fonder heart in absence. The fonder heart in absence bypasses trial by fire and gleanings. Yogic, it acknowledges its psychedelic leanings. The fonder heart. How much fonder, oh, in sweet absentia, could one grow? Left in absinthe, amethyst, yonder. I know little of gemstones, but see the glow? All's fuel, all's fair fuel. What should shock and eradicate? What should stymie and impeach? What should be hit hard like bedrock and reeled away from? Instead, to this you reach. Not to mine the fonder heart. You are in the presence of another who cannot love you. This brings you to greater resonance, hovering, untouchable, this one, above you. Here we are, one, laden, tabled, ready. Two, disabled and on hold, but holding steady. Three, locked in eternal tableau. Who will be the first? the first to let go. Interest. Questions to bring me out of the dark, he asks, leaning forward into what is known of me as yet. I know this is interest, the spark I've seen strike, spike, sputter, and come to be. Lord knows I felt it too, that great hunger to know who someone is, the strange, strong gut and heart and clutch of it, the wonder of wondering. Sure, I love to answer questions about the making of me, unless for some reason, also gut, I have to withhold. Another thing not good for faking is interest, and no less the receiving than the taking. Look, he looks forward into the thick of this, not knowing I've already made my choice. I should be forgetting, but instead I miss more than ever your lead, your ask, your voice. The given, living, texture, color, taste of you. Everything that the world withdrew. Louder than other words, anyone's, his or hers. Bless him for trying. But I'm still yours. And finally, a poem entitled by its first line, I Cannot Help It, The Modern Age. I cannot help it. The modern age impinges and is everywhere. At least I touch a smooth white page once made of wood. And from thin air comes a line freed from the prison of the alphabet. Once it's there, this thing that never was, this reason to live and relive that relieves one's burden by just a bit. It is as if the blood comes back into the brain. One's parched lands are cooled by rain, and it feels, for that moment, good. Sensation and thought. Biogenesis. Computers are magic, but I can do this. And yes, indeed, she certainly could, and she did. And we are all the richer for it. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. That was very moving, and how wonderful that you could bring her poems to life for us.
Thank you.
If everyone would like to unmute and clap for the wonderful readings we've had, all beautiful.
Really, thank you so much.
This is a great reading.
Wonderful. Absolutely terrific.
And all three of you worked so well together, your material and your poems. I imagine that there are comments and questions for our readers. So we have time for a Q&A, which you can either unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can drop one in the chat. Or
Janis, before we do that, can we see if any of the members of Kate's family have any comments or statement to make?
Sure.
It's open to any member of Kate's family if they want to say a few words also.
Sure. Thank you. I guess I'll start. I'm Judy Light, or Judith Light. I'm Kate's oldest sister. And Michael, really a beautiful sampling and also an incredible overview of all the other things that fellow poets and colleagues have said about Kate. It was really moving. I don't even really know where to start. I actually was not familiar with any. I knew that this book was in process, but I hadn't read any of the poems before she died. And so I was really surprised by a few of them. I know the references. I certainly was present in those early days. So the mirroring thing is a story that I tell all the time about my mother, you know, taking Kate and taking all of us into the concerts and convocations and lectures and films and everything at Purdue University, where both my parents taught. And Kate was eager to go. She was younger than 4, I think, at times too. So that was wonderful. I won't say any more, except to thank you so much, Michael. It was so sensitively read too, and sensitively chosen. And I think there are probably other others are on the phone. I haven't looked at in my view to see who else is here. So I'll just turn it over to them. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is Steve Light. I don't know if you can hear me, but
Yes.
but first of all, thank you to Janis and to Alex and to Michael for delightful reading. And Michael, what you captured, just playing off of Judy's remarks, you captured Kate's spirit. She was a spirited reader of her own work. And the most wonderful part about Kate was the combination of her lyricism and her musicality. And a lot of that came from her upbringing in the Light family, where we all value the things that all of you who are here with us today value about words and wordplay, but also about music and sounds and how wonderful all of that can make us feel. So this is a terrific tribute to Kate, but also want to thank the others who shared their work, and the combination of the work together is really what made this a special day. So thank you.
Mhm. Are there any other of Kate's friends or other family members who would like to make a comment?
Well, I just wanted to, I was a friend and colleague of Kate's and at New York City Opera and also at American Lyric Theater. So I knew her as a musician and as a writer and as a friend. She was a neighbor also, and is much missed in all of those constituencies. And I just want to thank you all for this occasion. I just felt her presence very, very strongly today. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else who would like to make a comment about Kate? Okay. We can open up then to questions and comments for Michael, Jeredith, or Carrie. And if you want to unmute yourself and speak up, that's great. Or I can look for a hand if you want to put a hand next to your name. And I guess I have a question that I could start with while other people are thinking for all three of you, and that was is the role of autobiography and imagination, and how the balance of that, or which comes first, which is the inspiration. I know you read, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, speaking only for myself, not even for Kate, of course, in my own case, I don't usually find that a subject is the starting point for a poem. And so no, I don't think, well, someday I'll have to write a poem about such and such an experience that I had. So it's the way of attacking it the way of transmuting it into something that will be interesting to people who have no particular interest in what I did 40 years ago. That is usually the thing that will start a poem going. So I guess I'd have to say imagination over autobiography if I had to choose.
And that if that's your poetry collection, Michael, that you're in front of, that's very impressive.
Yes, well, it's been some 60 years in the making, actually. Yes.
Carrie or Jeredith, would you like to comment?
You know, the question sort of stymies me. I wanted to say, Michael, how much I enjoyed your reading. Well, it just got you there. I love the way you
Thank you.
read those poems.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that question. I guess little bits of music come to me often on my notepad when I'm sleeping. I wake up and I write down something, and I'm not sure how to relate that to either autobiography or imagination. It's just out of the liminal state of dream, and I think it's a bit of music that I want to keep and develop. So I'm not relating to the question right now, but certainly I wouldn't keep something autobiographical and put it in the public unless I thought that it went deep enough and honest enough that it might connect with that course of life in someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Carrie, would you like to comment?
I can't. Can you see me twitching? This this totally fair and reasonable question makes me so uncomfortable because I am a narrative poet. I often start with a story, but not all my poems are true, right? And I love that I can trick people. And I've had questions about poems sometimes where I'm like, oh God, I made all of that up, all of it. Or I made up your favorite part, right? There were other true things in there, but the part you're talking about, made it up. Or I can't remember, which might be worse. So I'm just gonna quote my dad. Stories aren't lies if you tell them right.
Well, my reaction to your reading, Carrie, was, I practiced my faith this morning, and I heard as much truth in your reading as I heard this morning otherwise. So,
oh my goodness, such a compliment. Thank you.
Nope, there was good truth stuff in there that were some of your lies.
Probably. Thank you.
I was going to try to jump in, although I cannot pretend to be able to talk for Kate because her vision was really so singularly Kate. But I might say, I wonder if she would say words and music, sort of both, the dance, the interplay, the lyrics. She loved puns and riddles too, so twisting and turning and all of that it brought in, just the musicality. So that's just off the top of my head, trying to speak for Kate and failing, I think.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments for our readers? Yeah. I guess just a comment I would make that is that all of the poems we heard today, not all of them, but many of them dealt with grief in a powerful way. And I also have written poems about tragic experiences. And so it's wonderful to hear how each of you handled that, to move it beyond your own grief to something more universal. So thank you.
This is Dan Simpson. I have a comment that I came here mostly because I wanted to, I had some, not a very involved friendship with Kate, but I knew her and met her once in the city and spent a day with her and was just touched by how generous she was with her time and what a great person she was to talk with. So I came here really to honor her and to be able to continue in a way my connection with her. And what's wonderful about this reading is that in the process I got to, certainly really appreciated and really enjoyed your reading, Michael, of her work. But I also got to expand my world and meet the poetry of Carrie and Jeredith. And I love that this is how the poetry world can work, and we can start with one person and their work and move out. So thank you for making that available.
Indeed.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to say something or has a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
So thank you to all the speakers and poets. Yeah, and I appreciate the poems on grief as well for personal reasons also. I'm just trying to get some sort of advice on sort of how to get back into poetry when you haven't sort of, I've written, but I sort of fell back a little bit the past couple of years through just being busy with my family and teaching. And now I'm trying to get a new regimen in. So I'm trying to sort of figure out, what would your recommendations be to any three of you regarding how much time to put in it each morning? And also I struggle with sort of figuring out how often I should submit, because I think I used to almost undersubmit, because some people would say, oh, you have to put out so much a week. So just anything that speaks to that would be appreciated, because I want to sort of get back on the horse, so to speak, but I want to do it the right way. So.
I guess I would just jump in and say, I'm not sure there's a one right way. That however much time you have or you want to spend on it is probably right for you.
I don't know that there's any wrong way. I know many people follow a writing schedule. I've never done that. There's a wonderful little piece in Robert Francis's book, The Satirical Rogue on Poetry, which I heartily recommend to all poets, in which essentially he makes the point that the world would be a much better place if there were many fewer poems in it, and only those poems that absolutely demanded to be written actually got put down on the page. And as I say, I've never said I'm going to set a certain amount of time aside every day to just put something on paper and see what happens. I've always taken the view that Francis articulates, that you should only write a poem when you can't not write it, when it insists on being put down on paper. If it's not deeply felt by you, how is it likely to move anyone else? I don't know if that's helpful at all.
No, it's helpful. I appreciate it.
Okay, then I have a question for you, Mr. Palma. You have to sit down with Dante for a very, very long time and really be dedicated to what someone else said. Okay, so you're that way with Dante.
Yes, well, and many other poets that I've translated. That, of course, translation, if you can do it, and if you're interested in doing it, is certainly a way of keeping the engine tuned when you're not, you don't have anywhere to go yourself. It's a wonderful way of practicing your craft and reminding you of the importance of craft, that so much of what a poem consists of is not just what is said, but the way in which it's said. By reading what other people have done and trying to find strategies that will convey the essence of what they've done. It can be a marvelous way of developing your own abilities, even when you're not really writing anything. And it is a way of feeling that you're still in the game, even when you're not catching any lightning in your own personal bottle.
If I may interject, I find that when I get ideas, the only way to figure out whether they're good ideas or not is actually to pursue them. That I find out in the course of writing the poem, whether it's a good poem or not. I don't know before I've written it, this is going to be a good poem. I actually have to do it to find out.
I feel the same way. And I just think, I mean, I have a lot of words. Some writers I think don't have a lot of words, and I have a lot of words, and they're not all great words. They're often not in the right order. For me, I take a lot of solace in the act of writing, and sometimes you work on something and it doesn't work out. It doesn't turn into anything. Nobody needs to hear it except you. But I don't think I've ever lost anything by doing that, right? Because I'm still practicing. I'm still learning something. And that's what works for me. I don't know about this urgent. I don't know. How do you know until it's done? How do you know if anybody needs to hear it?
Well, often nowadays I find that I'll think that would make a good poem, and then the counter feeling comes in. Well, I've already written that poem or a variation on it at least 5 times, and 100 better poets have done it as well. And so I find that I'm much more selective in terms of what I'm actually willing to take to the next step and start putting words down on paper. And it's, again, as I said, it's not really the subject so much as it is the form that usually for me kickstarts a poem. It's only when a phrase, some particular wording that begins to form that I'll actually reach for the paper or the keyboard or whatever's handiest. So as I say, it's more a desire to make something than it is to say something that begins the process. And then, of course, once it begins, and certainly the saying becomes a very large part of the whole experience.
Yeah, I love what you said, Michael, about, and making. And then I'm seeing you in front of your wonderful library, and I'm thinking how much, the idea from Gunn's letter about poets being in the room with you, that living with poets, living and dead, feeling in conversation with them. Is a lot of what certainly makes me want to write and enables my writing. I guess I wanted to add, I didn't read very many poems, and then I realized they were all to men, and I just wanted to say that isn't all I've honored and written to. I've written on Marianne Moore and Elizabeth Bishop. I've written poems for Elizabeth Bishop. I've written poems about the prima ballerina Margot Fontaine. I've written about the painter Joan Mitchell. So I just wanted to say that in terms of my feminism in poetry. But yeah, living with and among living and dead poets is our honor and our joy, and I think what keeps us fueled.
Yeah.
Very well put.
There's a fine little poem by a poet held in much more disdain these days than he deserves to be, Robert Southey. that begins "My days among the dead are past," that speaks precisely to what Jeredith was just saying. It's worth looking into if you can. You can find anything on the internet these days, and I'm sure you can find it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment or question or something they'd like to say? If not, let me thank our readers again. That was really a fantastic afternoon of poetry. At least it's afternoon here in North Carolina. And each of you did a wonderful job. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for coming. Alex, do you have anything that you would like to say before we close?
I'll just say thank you to everyone for a wonderful afternoon, and thank you to our readers, Jeredith, Carrie, and Michael, reading on behalf of Kate. It was all wonderful, and I hope to see you all for another reading soon, hopefully next month. Meanwhile, I'll be looking to have the video of this reading out sometime. And for those of you who are on Able Muse mailing list, I'll notify you when that happens. So be sure to sign up to our mailing list so you can be updated to what's going on. And also remember the book award entry, which is closing this month, and submissions to Able Muse, the journal. So all that was on the links I posted in the chat box. So thank you all for a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex and Able Muse Press, for making this possible.
It was wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for
Very
being
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes, I echoing Steve, thank you, Alex, and thank you, everybody. And I was very moved by everything I heard and really touched by the range of what you had to convey. So thank you. And Janis, a beautiful job of moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You. Bye, all. Bye-bye. Bye, Michael.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.